video is going to deal with interest groups. It's going to deal with why we have interest groups. It's going to deal with what is the purpose of interest groups, and it's going to also address the issue of what interest groups do and how they serve the American population. But before we get into this detailed discussion on interest groups, we need to understand the concept of public policy. And public policy is simply any decision that a level of government makes. Governments are created, as we talked before, to control the public, to make sure that individuals living in a certain geographic region are following the rules, and that one group of people don't become too powerful and tyrannize the other group. So when the government's making decisions, they're basically making decisions, rules, or laws that are designed to control the geographic region. Now, every time the government makes a decision, it is impacting its citizens. The huge decisions impact the citizens, as well as the small and significant ones that we never think about. For example, when the federal government looks at the situation that's going on right now in North Korea, the decision of whether or not we go to war against North Korea is a major public policy issue. And it impacts everybody in the country. And we hear a lot about that on the news. But we don't hear very much on the news about the fact that a couple of years ago, the city of Cape Girardeau decided to tell all of its citizens, you can no longer own or use a trash can or a recycling can of your choosing. Every household in Cape Girardeau several years ago was told you have to use this can for trash and this can for recycling. We don't think about that being a public policy issue, but it really is. It's not a national issue that you're going to hear on the national news, but there were definitely people in Cape Girardeau that were impacted by that decision. So anytime any level of government, whether it's the city council, the school board, the state government, the national, anytime they make a decision, we call that public policy. It's a policy that the public has to adhere to. And we as Americans, no, not as Americans, but as human beings, we are self-interested. We want public policy that the government makes to benefit us. We don't want the government to make decisions that harm us. We're wanting the government to make decisions that benefit us. And the problem in the United States, as we talked about in the past, is that the United States is developed along the lines of being a Republican form of government. We're not a true democracy. In true democracy, all of the citizens would directly take part in the policy-making process. We don't do that in the United States. What we do in the United States is we elect or appoint a group of people to represent us. At the city council, we elect the city councilmen. On the school board, we elect school board members. On the county commission, we elect county commissioners. In the state legislature, we elect the state legislators. At the national level, we elect members of Congress and we elect the president. So we don't directly make the decisions in public policy decisions at our government levels. We pick people to do it for us. But again, we want those elected officials to make public policy that benefits us. And the only way to make sure that these elected officials are making decisions that benefit us or that we want them to make is for us to inform them of how we think they should vote or what decisions they should make. And I'm going to talk about two basic ways that we as citizens can try and impact the decisions that our elected officials make. First, we could individually contact our government officials. I could call my member of Congress. I could call my state legislators. I could call my city council member and tell them what I think they should do. But think about it. If you're an elected official and one person calls you and says, hey, I think you should vote in favor or against Medicaid expansion in Missouri, you're really not going to be listening very, very closely to me because I'm only one person. And if I'm the only person who calls you to tell you you should vote for or against Medicaid expansion, you're not going to really think that a whole lot of people care about this issue, so you're not going to pay a whole lot of attention to it. But if I could get 10,000 of my friends who feel the same way I do to all contact you, then it's going to be a little bit different. You're going to, as an elected official, you're going to react a little bit differently. But the problem is, do I have time to contact 10,000 of my friends and encourage them and make sure they contact their elected official? No, that's not something that I can do because I've got a full-time job. So what a lot of people do is they will join a larger group that already exists. They'll find some organization out there that maybe has 10,000 or 100,000 members that feel the same way about certain issues. And they will join that group. And when I join that group of 30,000 people who feel the same way I do about gun control, then I can provide dues, provide some resources, provide some money to that organization, and when that organization contacts an elected official, that organization can say, hey, elected official, I have 30,000 members, and all 30,000 members that I have think you should vote for or against this certain public policy. This group has people that work for them that's their only job, is to contact the elected officials on behalf of their membership. That's much more effective. It's much more effective when one person calls and says, hey, I'm calling on behalf of 10,000 or 30,000 people, than when I call myself and say, hey, I'm calling to tell you I'm against this policy, and then I turn around and try and get my other friends to contact that elected official. The second process is much more efficient. And when we join a group of people that have similar beliefs as us, that are trying to impact public policy, that's called an interest group. An interest group, as the definition on the screen shows you, is simply a group of individuals with common beliefs, values, and opinions that band together to affect a given area of public policy. They attempt to affect public policy without getting their members elected to public office. And there's two things there that I want you to really, really notice about that definition of interest groups. They band together. An interest group is a group that purposely organizes themselves and tries to get as many people to join their group with one purpose. And they try to get as many people to join their group so that they can impact the governmental decisions as it relates to the issue that they care about. Interest groups, as this definition will show you, do not try to get their members elected to public office. And it's another issue about interest groups that you have to be very, very clear on, is that they don't try to get their members elected to office. And the reason they don't is because an interest group bands together around one specific issue. The NRA is an interest group that cares about gun-related issues. When the NRA contacts an elected official, they are asking that government official to pay attention to their issue, gun control. If the NRA was to elect one of their members to Congress, that NRA member now becomes a member of Congress, and that member of Congress is required by his position or her position to deal with many issues, not just gun control. So interest groups don't want to get their members elected because once you get elected, you have to start worrying about many issues, and then the interest group that you originally came from becomes one of many different issues you care about. Interest groups go to elected officials, and all they do is talk to the elected officials about their one particular issue. Or interest groups might go to the general public and talk about their one particular issue. Interest groups care about their little set of issues only. There are three basic reasons people join interest groups. Or in other words, there are three basic types of interest groups. And people will join an interest group, a particular interest group, only when they have the incentive to do it. So if I am a gun owner and I'm afraid that the government's going to take my guns away from me, I personally can't do anything about that. but I fear that the government's going to take my guns away from me, so now I have the incentive to join the NRA or some other gun-related interest group. If I live in the state of Washington, and I own property on a beautiful lake, and the government is coming in and somebody's going to start drilling in that lake and mining for gold in that lake, and it's going to ruin the environment in which I own land, I have an incentive to join a environmental interest group, and I will join that. So there are three basic reasons or incentives that people have for joining interest groups. First of all, we will join interest groups for strictly social purposes. There are interest groups out there that deal with all types of topics. There's an interest group out there that deals with model airplane builders. There are interest groups out there that deal with people who like to drive four-wheelers. There are interest groups out there for people who like to play poker socially. There are interest groups out there like the Eagles Club or the Moose Club, or the Veterans of Foreign Wars. Those are interest groups, and people join those primarily for social reasons. Why do you join the VFW if you're a veteran of foreign war? Because you're going to get a cheap beer on Friday night. You're also going to be able to go into the VA and the VFW, and you're going to be able to talk to other people who have had similar combat experiences. So solidarity or social purposes are the first reason that people join interest groups. The second reason, which is the largest and most common reason for people to join interest groups, are for material or economic purposes. If I own a small microbrewery and I brew beer and I sell it, and that's my livelihood, I by myself can't do a whole lot because I'm just a small microbrewery. What can I do against, Anheuser-Busch and Miller and all of those big ones? But what happens is, if I'm running a small microbrewery and there's 700 other small microbreweries in Missouri, and all 7 of us running these microbreweries come together and form an interest group, then maybe we have a little bit more ability to compete economically with the big guys. A couple of examples that I put on the PowerPoint presentation. National Association of Pork Producers. Pork farmers need to earn money. They need to make sure that the markets are favorable to them. They need to make sure that the government have policies that makes it easy for them to operate their pork farms and makes it easier for them to make a profit. So what do? They come together and they create the National Association of Pork Producers. Then there might also be a Missouri Association of Pork Producers. Material or economic purposes are the number one reason that people join interest groups. It's the number one reason why interest groups exist. And then the last is what we call purposive or intrinsic purposes. If I join an interest group for intrinsic purposes, I'm doing it because I believe it's the right thing to do. I've got a friend that teaches here at the university that every year pays her dues to be a member of Greenpeace. And Greenpeace does a lot in dealing with, issues like ending the whale harvesting, ending, the clubbing of baby seals. All of these are issues, none of which have anything to do with the state of Missouri. But she joins Greenpeace and pays her dues every year because she thinks it's important that we maintain, a quality environment. It's the right thing to do to make sure that we don't cause whales or seals or the 3-horned, yellow-spotted, green-toed frog from going extinct. Another example of an interest group that exists for intrinsic purposes is what we call the American Civil Liberties Union. A lot of people know the American Civil Liberties Union as this group of liberal people who go around defending people that have been persecuted or been accused of doing certain things. The American Civil Liberties Union is made up of a bunch of lawyers who go out and defend people, most of whom cannot afford lawyers. So why do these lawyers go out and defend these people? Not because they're making huge money being lawyers, but because they think the civil liberties that we have are important enough to protect. So make sure you understand those 3 reasons that interest groups exist. We could also say those are the 3 reasons people join interest groups. Now I want to throw a little bit of a curveball at you. Now that we've talked about the concept of why people would join interest groups, I want to ask you a little bit different question. Why would an individual who wants to impact a certain topic or issue choose not to join an interest group? And as I said earlier in the video, in order for a person to join an interest group, they have to have the incentive to do so. And think about it. Let's pretend that I'm an individual that's 56 years old, and I want the government to deal with issues related to the aging population in a way that benefits me. I would probably want to join an interest group. And the interest group I would probably want to join would be the AARP. But I really don't have to join the AARP because most everybody else in the country who is over the age of 55 has joined the AARP. If the AARP is already working on issues that benefit people over the age of 55, then there's really no need for me to join that interest group, because whether or not I join the AARP and start paying dues to the AARP is already working on my issue. And if I choose not to join the AARP because I'm benefiting from what they're doing anyway, that's called being a free rider. And it's a huge issue that interest groups run into. Because we as human beings would much rather take something for nothing than have to pay for it. And if I'm a gun owner and the NRA is already in existence, there's no reason for me to join the NRA because they're already dealing with gun issues. They're already protecting my right to own a gun. The free rider is a huge problem for interest groups. And if interest groups do not figure out how to overcome this free rider issue, they can very easily be put out of business. Because interest groups are non-for-profits. Interest groups don't have unlimited amounts of money. When interest groups are contacting government officials and doing other things to protect the interests of their members, they're spending money. And if people aren't joining the interest groups, they're not paying dues, then the interest groups don't have the resources necessary to do what they do to protect their members. So interest groups have developed several different mechanisms for overcoming the free rider problem. The first one they do is they provide selective benefits to their members. There are certain things that interest groups will do that only their members can access. And again, dealing with the AARP, for example. Just because I'm over the age of 55, if I was, I'm not, by the way. Just because I'm over the age of 55, I am automatically going to get some of the protection that the AARP is protecting or providing. But unless I join AARP, unless I pay my dues every year, I'm not going to get that little AARP card that provides me discounts at the movie theater or at the restaurant or at the pharmacy. So the only way to get those benefits is for me to join, and interest groups try to develop as many selective benefits as possible. The American Medical Association is an interest group, and one of the benefits they provide to doctors who join the American Medical Association is they get access to the Journal of the American Medical Association. It's a huge source of information about medical research. It would cost doctors lots of money to go out and get it on their own. So what they do is the American Medical Association says, hey, you join our interest group, provide us with your dues every year, and we will provide you with this journal. American Medical Association also provides their members with a referral program. The American Medical Association has an 800 number. If I need a cardiologist and I'm in Utah, I call the American Medical Association and say, hey, I need a cardiologist. And they pull up their program and they say, okay, there's cardiologists in Utah in these different cities. It's a service that cardiologists and other doctors really value, that referral program. If I want these benefits that the interest group is providing, beyond the basic benefits they provide to all its members, I have to pay my dues. The other way that interest groups will overcome the free rider program is what we call coercion. It's almost like the interest group will force a group of people to join their interest group. Unions are a type of interest group. Unions look out for the protection of their union members. My wife worked at a factory here in Cape Girardeau, and before she could get the job at the factory, she had to join the union. She was coerced. So whether or not my wife wanted to be a member of that union or not, in order to work at Thorngate, she was coerced into having to join the union. My wife every month gave a certain percentage of her paycheck in the form of dues to the union. Now the union, the interest group, has the ability to continue to exist. Another way that interest groups coerce people to join their interest group is by them regulating their industry. For example, the American Bar Association. The American Bar Association is the entity that looks at lawyers. Each state in the union has a bar association, the Missouri Bar Association. In order to be able to to practice law in the state of Missouri, you have to be a member of the Missouri Bar Association. You have to pass the bar exam. And to take the bar exam, you have to be a member of the Missouri Bar Association, which is an interest group. So if you want to practice law in Missouri, you're just about forced to join the Missouri Bar Association. If I want to be what do we call those people that deal with money? If I want to be a public accountant, a CPA, a certified public accountant, I have to join a particular interest group and pay dues every year so that I can maintain my certification, because in the state that I live in, I have to be a certified public accountant to do it, and to become certified I have to join the interest group. They coerce me to join their group. The free rider problem is one that interest groups are constantly having to deal with.